On a humid spring evening in 1993, in the quiet, working-class town of West Memphis, Arkansas,
3 8-year-old boys, Stevie Branch, Michael Moore, and Christopher Byers, set out on their bicycles, never imagining they were riding into a darkness.
Because by the next day, their disappearance would trigger a frantic search, one that would end not in relief, but in horror.
When their bodies were discovered submerged in a muddy drainage ditch in a wooded area known as Robin Hood Hills. Bound, beaten.
Something that would ignite fear, suspicion, and ultimately a case so controversial that it would divide America into believers and... In the immediate aftermath, panic spread quickly through the small community. And with panic came a desperate need for answers, for someone to blame this. And in that vacuum of fear and confusion, attention soon turned toward 3 teenagers who didn't quite fit in.
The case eventually became associated with 3 local East Asian teenagers who later drew national attention.
And from the moment their names entered the investigation, the case began to take a shape that would raise unsettling questions about... As media attention surrounding the case intensified, one of the teenagers quickly became a central figure in public discussion because of his image and personality.
He wore black, listened to heavy metal music, read books about the occult, and spoke openly about topics that unsettled those around him.
And in the early 1990s, at the height of what many later referred to as the Satanic Panic, these characters creating a dangerous situation where perception began to outweigh proof, while Jason Baldwin, his close friend, was quieter but equally marginalized. And Jessie Misskelley Jr., who had a significantly lower IQ and was known to be suggestible, would soon become the linchpin of the prosecution's case.
Because after hours of intense interrogation, much of it unrecorded, Jessie confessed to participating in the murders.
A confession that, despite containing numerous inconsistencies and factual errors, would be used to arrest and charge all 3 teenagers. As the case moved forward, the prosecution painted a chilling picture of a ritualistic killing, suggesting that the boys had been murdered as part of a satanic rite.
A claim that was never supported by credible physical evidence, but nonetheless resonated deeply with a community already gripped by fear.
And Jessie's confession, despite its contradictions, including incorrect timelines and descriptions that did not match the crime scene, was presented as the cornerstone of the case, stating that he had been coerced, that he had said what investigators wanted to hear after hours of pressure, but by then, the damage had been done. Because once a confession enters the public consciousness, it becomes nearly impossible to erase, and for many it's still...
The trials themselves only deepened the controversy, with Jessie Misskelley Jr. being tried separately and convicted first, receiving a life sentence plus additional years.
As the trial moved forward, public debate surrounding the case continued to grow, with many questions remaining heavily discussed for years afterward.
Public perception, courtroom arguments, and earlier statements continued to shape the narrative surrounding the case. In 1990, its verdicts,
a decision that would later become one of the most contentious aspects of the case, raising the stakes from a possible miscarriage of justice to a potential irreversible tragedy. As the years passed, the case refused to fade into obscurity, largely due to growing public interest and the emergence of new voices questioning the integrity of the investigation,
including filmmakers, journalists, and legal experts who began to scrutinize the evidence, or lack thereof,
which brought national attention to the case and introduced millions of viewers to the possibility that the West Memphis Three might be innocent.
As the case continued to draw public attention, many people began questioning earlier assumptions, and support for the 3 individuals steadily grew over time. Over time, the case drew increasing public attention, with well-known figures from the entertainment world publicly expressing interest in renewed discussions surrounding the events.
Who helped fund new investigations and legal efforts, bringing resources and attention that the defense had previously lacked.
And as advances in forensic science, particularly DNA testing, became more accessible, new evidence began to emerge,
including DNA that did not match any of the 3 convicted men, raising serious doubts about their guilt and fueling arguments that the real perpetrator.
Yet despite these developments, the legal system proved resistant to revisiting the convictions, with appeals and motions often denied. As public discussion surrounding the case continued to evolve, differing perspectives persisted for years, while the situation surrounding those involved, because the possibility of execution loomed over a case that many believed was fundamentally flawed, forcing all involved to confront a difficult question.
The answer, when it finally came in 2011, was as controversial as the case itself, taking the form of an unusual legal mechanism known as an Alford plea. I maintain my innocence, but I know the prosecution has enough evidence to secure a conviction.
Years later, a major courtroom development brought renewed national attention to the case, ultimately leading to the release of the three men after many years behind bars.
A resolution that allowed them to walk free but did not exonerate them, leaving their convictions technically intact and the question of their guilt unresolved in the eyes of the law. A compromise that satisfied neither side completely, because while the three men regained their freedom, they were denied the full vindication that comes with exoneration. And the families of the victims were left without a clear sense of closure, still grappling with the loss of their... Today, the case of the West Memphis Three remains one of the most debated and analyzed criminal cases in American history. A story that continues to evolve as new evidence is examined and new theories emerge, including ongoing efforts to conduct additional DNA tests. A story that continues to evolve as new evidence is examined and new theories emerge, including ongoing efforts to conduct additional DNA testing. Voiceover using modern techniques that were not available at the time of the original investigation. Efforts that could potentially confirm or challenge the conclusions reached decades ago. But regardless of what future developments may reveal, the case has already left an indelible mark on the American justice system and the influence of cultural fear on legal outcomes, reminding us that justice is not just about securing convictions, because when the pursuit of answers becomes entangled with bias and assumption, the result can be a tragedy that extends far beyond the original crime, affecting not only the accused, but also the victims and their families, who deserve certainty, accountability, and above all, the truth.
A truth that, in the case of the West Memphis Three, still feels just out of reach.
Justice isn't always black and white. Sometimes it's just a shade of gray that leaves us all haunted. What do you think? Let us know in the comments.